Thomas Bennett stood at the window of his corner office, watching the world below transform into something magical. Thomas was 58 years old, with silver threading through his dark hair and kind lines around, his eyes that spoke of both success and solitude. He'd built Bennett Industries from nothing, turning a small manufacturing company into an empire. But lately, the empty penthouse and silent dinners had begun to weigh on him. His assistant had left hours ago, reminding him about the charity gala downtown. Thomas had nodded absently, but he found himself walking in the opposite direction that evening, toward the town square where the annual Christmas market was in full swing. The air smelled of roasted chestnuts and pine. Children's laughter mixed with carolers' voices, creating a symphony of joy that Thomas observed from the outside, as he always did. That's when he saw her. A little girl sat in a wheelchair near the fountain, apart from the bustling crowd. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, wearing a pink coat that had seen better winters and a knitted hat, pulled down over blonde hair. But it was her face that stopped Thomas in his tracks. She was watching the other children with such longing, yet such acceptance, that it broke something open in his chest. Thomas approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Hello there," he said gently, crouching down to her level. "I'm Thomas. What's your name?" The little girl turned to him with wide blue eyes that held far too much understanding for someone so young. "I'm Emma," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Are you lost?" Thomas smiled. "Maybe I am. This is a big market." Emma considered this seriously. "My mom says when you're lost, you should stay in one place so people can find you. That's why I'm here by the fountain." "Your mom sounds wise," Thomas said. "Is she shopping?" Something flickered across Emma's face. Something that looked like worry mixed with love. "She's working," Emma explained. "She cleans the restaurant across the street. She can see me from the window so she knows I'm safe." Thomas glanced toward the restaurant and saw a woman inside, scrubbing tables with determined efficiency. Even from this distance, he could see the exhaustion in her movements. He turned back to Emma, noticing details he'd missed before. The wheelchair was old, with one wheel that didn't quite track straight. Emma's hands were tucked into her coat pockets for warmth, and her shoes, though clean, were scuffed at the toes. "Do you like hot chocolate?" Thomas asked suddenly. Emma's face lit up, then dimmed just as quickly. "I shouldn't. Mom says not to take things from strangers." "Your mom is right," Thomas agreed. "But what if we asked her permission first? Would that be okay?" Emma thought about this, then nodded. "I suppose that would be proper." The word proper coming from this small girl made Thomas smile. He walked to the restaurant, Emma wheeling herself beside him with practiced ease, and spoke to Emma's mother, Sarah, through the doorway. Sarah was 32, with the same blonde hair and blue eyes as her daughter, pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her face was lined with worry and hard work, but when she looked at Emma, pure love softened every feature. "I'm Thomas Bennett," he introduced himself. "I was wondering if I might buy Emma a hot chocolate while you finish your shift. We'll stay right where you can see us." Sarah's eyes narrowed slightly, protective and suspicious in the way of someone who'd learned to be careful. But Emma was already saying, "Please, Mom. He seems nice, and he asked you first, just like you taught me." Something in Sarah's expression shifted. Perhaps it was the gentleness in Thomas's voice, or the genuine kindness in his eyes, or simply the fact that her daughter so rarely asked for anything. "All right," Sarah said finally. "But Emma, you stay in sight of this window. I'll be watching." "I will, Mom." "I promise!" Thomas bought 2 hot chocolates from a nearby cart, and he and Emma settled on a bench near the fountain. The snow continued to fall, and the lights twinkled overhead like earthbound stars. "This is the best hot chocolate I've ever had," Emma said, her small hands wrapped around the warm cup. Thomas suspected it might be the only hot chocolate she'd had in a long time, but he simply nodded. "The cold makes it taste better, I think." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching families pass by with shopping bags and smiling faces. "Do you have any children, Mr. Thomas?" Emma asked. The question, so innocent and direct, hit harder than Thomas expected. "No," he said quietly. "I never did. I was always too busy with work, and then, well, time passed." Emma nodded as if she understood something profound. "My dad left when I was born. she said matter-of-factly. Mom says it wasn't my fault, that some people just aren't ready to be parents. But I think it was because of my legs. Thomas felt his throat tighten. Emma, I'm certain that wasn't your fault. Not any of it. I know, Emma said, surprising him with her wisdom. But knowing something and feeling something aren't always the same thing. Mom teaches me that. For the next hour, as Sarah finished her shift, Thomas and Emma talked. She told him about school, about her favorite books, about how she wanted to be a teacher someday, so she could help other kids feel smart and special. She told him about her mother's 3 jobs, about the apartment with the broken heater, about how Mom always made sure Emma had enough even when she didn't. And Thomas found himself sharing too, about his own childhood, about the father who'd pushed him to succeed, about the empire he'd built and the emptiness it hadn't filled. With this wise little girl, he didn't have to pretend. He could just be Tom, a man who'd gained the world but missed out on what mattered most. When Sarah emerged from the restaurant, her coat pulled tight against the cold, Thomas stood. "Thank you for letting me spend time with Emma," he said. "She's a remarkable young lady." Sarah's eyes were guarded but grateful. "Thank you for the hot chocolate." "Come on, sweetheart. We need to catch the bus." That's when Thomas noticed Sarah's shoes, worn through at the heel, and the way she tried to hide a limp. The bus stop was 4 blocks away, and she'd have to push Emma's wheelchair the whole way through the snow. "Please," Thomas said, "let me give you a ride home." "My car is just around the corner." Sarah started to refuse, but Emma said quietly, "Mom, your ankle is hurting." "I can tell." The defeat in Sarah's shoulders was painful to witness. Pride warred with practicality, and practicality won. "Just a ride," she said firmly. Nothing more. Thomas drove them to their apartment building on the edge of town, a place where the Christmas lights were sparse and the building showed its age. He helped Emma into her wheelchair and watched as Sarah maneuvered it up a ramp that had seen better days. "Thank you, Mr. Bennett," Sarah said, her guard up again now that they were at her home. "Tom," he corrected gently. "Just Tom." He should have driven away then, but he didn't. Instead, he found himself thinking about Emma all through the weekend, about her smile, her wisdom, her quiet acceptance of a world that hadn't been fair to her, about Sarah's fierce love and exhausting sacrifice. On Monday, Thomas made some calls. By Wednesday, he'd learned more about their situation than they'd ever told him. Sarah worked 3 jobs to pay for Emma's medical care and therapy. The wheelchair was a hand-me-down. There was a surgery that could help Emma walk again, but the cost was astronomical, far beyond what Sarah could ever hope to save. Thomas could write a check and solve everything, but he knew that wasn't what Sarah needed. Pride wasn't stubbornness, it was dignity. It was all Sarah had left. So Thomas did something different. He created a position at his company, a management role in community outreach that matched Sarah's skills perfectly. He made sure the salary was fair, the benefits comprehensive, and that it would cover Emma's surgery without charity. Without pity, just honest work for honest pay. When he called Sarah with the offer, there was a long silence on the line. "Why?" she finally asked, her voice thick with emotion. "Why would you do this for us?" "Because Emma reminded me what matters," Thomas said simply. "And because you deserve a chance to rest. Sarah, you deserve to be more than tired." Another silence, and then, "I'll take the job, but I'll earn every penny." "You'll see." 3 weeks later, on Christmas Eve, Thomas found himself invited to their apartment for dinner. It was small and simply furnished, but warm with love and the smell of Sarah's cooking. Emma had drawn him a picture, a man and a little girl sitting by a fountain, snowflakes all around. After dinner, as Sarah cleaned up and Thomas helped Emma with a puzzle, she looked up at him with those 2 wise eyes. "Mr. Tom," she said softly, "are you lonely?" The question should have been intrusive, but from Emma it was just honest. "Sometimes," Thomas admitted. "Yes." Emma nodded. "Mom gets lonely too. She tries to hide it, but I know. She gave up everything for me." "Your mom loves you very much." "I know," Emma said. "That's why I have to tell you something important." She wheeled closer, her expression serious. "I heard Mom talking on the phone to her friend last week," Emma said. "She said you wanted to adopt me." To give me a good life with doctors and a nice house and everything. Thomas froze. He had mentioned to Sarah tentatively that he'd love to be part of Emma's life if she'd allow it. But he hadn't known Emma had heard. "And I want to tell you," Emma continued, her small hand reaching for his, "please don't adopt me. Adopt my mom instead." Thomas blinked, confused. "Emma, I don't understand." Tears filled Emma's eyes, but her voice remained steady. "Mom needs someone to take care of her. She takes care of everyone else, but nobody takes care of her. If you adopt me, she'll be alone. But if you adopt her, then we'll all be together. That's how it should work." In that moment, Thomas understood. Emma wasn't thinking of herself, she was thinking of her mother. This child, who had every reason to grab at the chance for an easier life, was instead trying to make sure her mother wouldn't be left behind. Sarah came back into the room, saw the tears on Emma's cheeks, and immediately knelt down. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" "I told him," Emma said. "I told him he should adopt you instead of me." Sarah's face went through a dozen expressions. Shock, embarrassment, love, sorrow. She looked at Thomas helplessly. "I'm so sorry," she began. But Thomas was already shaking his head, his own eyes damp. "Don't apologize," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Emma just taught me something my father never did. Family isn't about grand gestures or financial support. It's about choosing each other every day, no matter what." He knelt down beside them both, this makeshift family that had found each other by chance. "I don't want to adopt either of you," Thomas said gently, and saw hurt flash across their faces before he continued. "I want to be part of your family if you'll have me. Not as a replacement for anyone, not out of pity or obligation, but because you two have shown me what I've been missing my entire life." He looked at Sarah, really looked at her, seeing not just exhaustion, but strength, not just worry, but hope. "Sarah, I'm not good with words, and I'm probably doing this all wrong. But would you consider letting me court you? The old-fashioned way? With dinners and conversations and time to know each other? No pressure, no expectations. Just a chance." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Tom, I come with complications. With responsibilities, with Emma," Tom finished. "I know. That's not a complication. That's a blessing." Emma looked between them, understanding dawning on her face. "Does this mean you'll be my dad?" "If your mom says yes, and if you'll have me," Thomas said. "Not right away. We'll take our time, but eventually, maybe. If it feels right to all of us." Emma threw her arms around his neck, and Sarah's tears spilled over. Thomas gathered them both close. This family he'd found in a snowy town square, and felt something inside him, something that had been frozen for years, finally thaw. Outside, the snow fell softly on Christmas Eve. Inside, 3 people who'd been searching without knowing it had finally found home. Not in a place, but in each other. And that, Thomas would later reflect, was the greatest gift of all, the gift that Emma, in her wisdom and selfless love, had given him. Not a family gained, but a heart restored. Not adoption papers, but the adoption of hope itself. Sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from the smallest voices. And sometimes, the richest man in town is the one who learns that love cannot be bought, only chosen again and again. In moments large and small for all the days to come,